I'm Berwan. In this dress, I use this shiny cupra fabric and polyester fabric for lining. I'm going to need a 60 centimeter length hidden zipper and matching color saving threads. Fabrics usually stretch widthwise, but this fabric stretches lengthwise. So while placing the pattern pieces on the fabric, I will keep this in mind. This is quite important to prevent fitting issues. Usually, we place the patterns parallel to the selvage, but this time I will do the opposite. However, for the lining fabric, I will place the patterns as usual. You can see little signs on all the pages and the page numbers. I'm cutting one side and then sticking it to the other. While sticking them together, these little signs should match, otherwise the pattern measurements will be wrong. You can use some tape, but I find it easier to work with glue. As you see, you can determine the size of the pattern. Then I repeat this process with all pages. It is important to ensure that the grain line on the pattern is parallel to the fabric selvage. As I said before, in my fabric I use the opposite direction, but still the pieces have to be parallel to the sides. First, I place it as straight as possible and start taking measurements. By repeating this process, I find the straightest version of it. I need to apply these single-sided sticky strips to prevent the corner parts from stretching, to stay stable, and to make saving easier. I apply these strips to necklines, shoulders, sleeve lines, and on the waist pieces, upper and lower lines. It is important to ensure that you are applying this only to the interfacing layer that will be between the lining and main fabric. I start by saving the front parts of the layer to which I applied these strips. After saving, as I said, I trim the seam allowance slightly. You can still proceed to the next step without doing this. Then I use a auxiliary stitch to avoid dealing with the overlock stitch and deciding which way to turn the seam allowances. It may be look even nicer if you save with the half centimeter seam allowance while doing this. Then, before covering the front piece, I need to apply gathering from the point visible here to the front. It is very important to place this gathering stitch half centimeter away, otherwise the stitch will be visible from the outside when the dress is finished. The gathering measurements are written on the pattern, but I may have to adjust it slightly by hand so I don't cut the threads too short after the gathering stitch. At this stage, the notches must match exactly. If there is too much excess when placing, you can push some out. My goal here is to cover the main fabric with one layer of lining and thread it as a single layer. This makes the main fabric more stable. I sew all the edges with a half centimeter seam allowance, following the notches on the pieces. I apply this lining process to all of the upper parts, back, front waist piece, back waist piece. I sew them all, following to the lining layer as much as possible. The lining will give the correct size because the fabric I use is not stable at all. Save the pieces with a half centimeter seam allowance, but be careful not to pull or stretch the pieces. I recommend placing the main fabric at the bottom. If I didn't do this, the fabric would stretch too much. After that, please take this little strip pattern and cut it with a seam allowance. Otherwise, it will be too small. I left a half centimeter while saving it, and then I saved the end. With this method, I can turn it more easily. After saving and turning it inside out, I iron it. I cut it to the 4 centimeter length I need. I will use these 4 centimeters for the front pieces. I take this strip and attach it to the front pieces bottoms. You can use pins in this step. Make sure you are saving it correctly to the front sides. Need to ensure there is a 1 centimeter space at the bottom because in the next step you will save the lining layer, and if it's not placed correctly, this little strip won't look nice. Now take the lining pieces and save them along the necklines and these gathered sides with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. After that, take the seam allowance with the lining fabric and apply a stitch with a 1 millimeter seam allowance. If you don't do this step, when you wear the dress, the neckline will roll and this stitch keeps it right. I make a small cut right where the seam ends and remove the remaining part. You should do this exactly at the seam ends and make sure not to exceed 1 centimeter. After removing the seam allowances, you can simply apply a stitch to this part. For a nicer look, I trim a little from this size because I don't want to make this area too thick. You might see some excess from the gathered area depending on the fabric you use. I also trim a bit from this corner to make it sharper and clearer. After that, as you see, the front part is almost done and I apply a stitch to the shoulder and sleeve lines. This keeps this side stable and helps in saving. Now I'm attaching the back pieces and applying overlock stitches to these lines and back lines, but you must be careful to turn the top and bottom waistline seam allowances towards each other. The upper waistline seam allowance must be turned downwards and the bottom waistline seam allowance must be turned upwards. While applying the overlock stitch to the back middle line, you must do it this way because it looks nice from the right side. Before saving the zipper, you can save the bottom zip dot to the hem and then save the zipper, but in this video I did the opposite. First I attached the zipper and then save the bottom side, and I recommend the first method because the endings of the zipper look much nicer. And while saving the zipper, I don't pull the fabric or zipper, I just put my finger on the fabric, otherwise it looks gathered outside when it's completed. Now you see two separate back lining parts, but I updated these to whole pieces in the pattern. After saving them together, I attached them to the zipper lines for a clean finish. Then you can save the necklines and cut the excess parts of the seam allowances. Like I said before, I do this step for a nicer look and I position this corner in this way and turn this side inside out. With this method, I'm having a nice zipper endings. As you can see, it's almost done. I'm taking the front top and skip parts and saving them together, then applying overlock stitches. When it is done, the seam allowance of the waist must be turned downwards. In the shoulder stitch, I place the front shoulder between the back lining and main fabric. When it's done, it looks clean and nice. In my dress, I didn't prefer a lining layer for the skirt, so the upper parts can be sewn like the shoulder. I place the front side lines like this and sew between the back lining and main fabric. You can just sew the side lines without the back lining. In the sleeves, I make the gatherings first at the hem and top, and I need cuffs to finish the sleeves. Take the cuff and hold it as if you are sewing, then put one side inside the other and sew in this way. So when it's completed, you won't see any stitches outside or inside. After sewing the sleeve side lines and applying overlock stitch, you can attach the cuffs to the sleeve hems and apply overlock stitches to these lines too. Once the sleeves are ready, I attach them to the dress, following the notches on the sleeve lines. After the whole process, I clean this area with an overlock stitch. Lastly, I finish the hems. If you don't have this saving foot, you can just make an overlock stitch and then fold it back and save it. And this is the Lolita dress. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to share your versions with me on Instagram.